I lost 40 pounds after menopause with Asian Pilates, but the hardest part of this story is that before that happened, I had already spent a long time doing what I thought were all the right things and getting almost nothing back from my body. And when that happens for long enough, the weight is not even the only thing that hurts anymore. What hurts is the feeling that your body has stopped responding to you. If you are in menopause right now and feel like nothing is working the way it used to, stay with me. Because what finally worked for me was not the thing I expected, and it was not what I had been told to do more of. In fact, one of the biggest reasons nothing was working was that I kept trying to solve this from the exact state that was making it worse. That was the part I could not see at first. For a long time, I thought the answer had to be more control, better control, cleaner habits, more consistency, more discipline. I thought maybe I had become too relaxed, too emotional, too impatient, too inconsistent. So every time my body changed in a way I did not like, I answered it the same way. I tightened up. If I felt heavier, I got stricter. If I looked puffier, I got more careful. If my clothes felt tighter, I told myself I needed to get serious again. If I felt discouraged, I translated that into do better. And from the outside, that probably looked responsible. Inside, it felt exhausting. I remember one evening, standing in my bedroom after changing clothes 3 times, with a pile of rejected outfits on the bed, looking at myself in the mirror and feeling that specific kind of discouragement that only comes when you have been trying for a long time and still do not feel like yourself. My first thought was not even, I hate how I look. It was, why does my body feel so far away from me? That is what menopause weight gain felt like at its worst. Not just extra pounds. Distance. Distance from the body I knew. Distance from the methods that used to work. Distance from that basic sense of trust that if I cared for myself, my body would eventually respond. And when that trust breaks down, women often react in a very predictable way. They escalate. That is what I did. I became more intense, more controlling, more watchful, more loaded in every decision I made around food, movement, and routine. I thought intensity would fix the problem, but intensity was not fixing it. Intensity was keeping me trapped inside it. That is why I say this was the first thing that worked when nothing else did, because what changed for me was not that I found a louder method. I found a method that stopped adding to the very state that was making my body hold on. That difference changed everything. At the time, though, I did not understand it that clearly. I just knew something was wrong with the way all my effort felt. Even when I was on track, I did not feel calm. I did not feel supported. I did not feel like I was building anything sustainable. I felt like I was managing a crisis. Every day had that energy. I was always evaluating, adjusting, correcting, trying not to lose ground. My body had become something I supervised all day long. That creates so much hidden strain. And strain changes how a body responds. What stood out to me about Asian Pilates was not some dramatic promise. Actually, by that point, I was tired of dramatic promises. I had heard enough of them. I had tried enough things that sounded powerful and ended up leaving me more tired, more guilty, or more disappointed than before. What caught my attention about this was much quieter. My body did not push back against it. That was new. It felt structured, but not punishing. Intentional, but not aggressive. It did not feel like one more thing I had to force myself through in order to deserve change. And because of that, the process itself started feeling different almost immediately. Not easy, not magical, but different. That difference was the beginning. The first thing that changed was that I no longer felt under attack by my own routine. This was huge because I had not realized how much of my old effort felt like self-pressure disguised as discipline. I was always trying to override something. Override fatigue, override frustration, override discouragement, override my body's resistance. That kind of approach can look admirable from the outside, but inside it creates a lot of friction. It makes health feel heavy. Asian Pilates did not have that same emotional cost for me. I could show up without feeling punished. I could continue without feeling burdened. I could return to it without the giant inner argument that used to come with every attempt to get back on track. That matters more than most people realize, because a method can sound effective and still fail if your body and mind experience it as one more source of stress. That had happened to me over and over again. The ideas looked good. The routines sounded right. But the lived experience of trying to sustain them felt so tense that eventually everything collapsed into fatigue or resentment. This was the first thing that felt like my body could actually receive it. That was the first sign I was finally in a different story. The second thing that changed was that I stopped needing dramatic proof every 5 minutes in order to believe I was not failing. This may sound small, but emotionally, it was massive. When you have felt stuck for a long time, you become addicted to checking. Checking the mirror, checking your stomach, checking how your jeans feel, checking whether your face looks puffy, checking whether anything is finally changing. And when you do not see dramatic proof quickly, panic rushes in. You think, here we go again, another thing that is not working. I know that cycle so well. What shifted for me was that I began to notice subtler signs first, and instead of dismissing them, I finally let them count. My body felt less swollen. My waist felt less hard. My clothes felt less hostile. My face looked less tired. I did not wake up feeling like my whole system had been gripping through the night. That was not the final result, but it was the beginning of release. And once I saw that, I stopped living in that desperate state of prove it to me right now. I started understanding that my body was changing in layers. Relief first, then trust, then consistency, then the bigger visible changes. That shift protected me from quitting too early. I think so many women leave a process right at the point where their body is finally beginning to respond, because the response is quiet before it is obvious. I almost did that too, but this time I stayed. And because I stayed, the results had room to build. The third thing that changed was that consistency stopped feeling like punishment. This may be one of the biggest reasons this worked when nothing else did. Before this, consistency always felt expensive. It cost me emotionally. It cost me mentally. I had to keep summoning willpower, urgency, and self-correction just to stay with the plan. That kind of consistency is fragile because it depends on pressure. Once the pressure becomes too heavy, everything cracks. Then you feel guilty, blame yourself, and start over harder. That cycle is brutal. And menopause seems to make it even harder because the body does not bounce back from that pressure the way it once did. With Asian Pilates, consistency felt different. It felt quieter, less dramatic, less dependent on me becoming some super disciplined, hyper-controlled version of myself. I could return to it without spending all morning building up emotional force. I could continue without feeling as though I was sacrificing my peace just to stay committed. That changed the whole process. Because once consistency no longer feels like punishment, it becomes repeatable. And repeatable is powerful. Repeatable is what lets real change accumulate. Repeatable is what gives the body time to respond. Repeatable is what carries you past the point where so many other attempts fall apart. That was the third shift, and I do not think I fully appreciated how important it was until much later. The fourth thing that changed was the deepest one of all. I stopped relating to my body through constant disappointment. This one almost makes me emotional to say out loud, because I do not think I realized how much disappointment had become the background music of my life. Every time I got dressed, every time I saw a photo, every time I felt bloated, every time I promised myself I would do better, there was always that feeling that I was somehow lagging behind where I should be. That is such a painful way to live. And what made it worse was that I thought disappointment was useful. I thought it would keep me sharp, keep me motivated, keep me from giving up. But disappointment did not make me steadier. It made me more reactive, more urgent, more likely to panic and tighten up every time my body was not moving fast enough. Asian Pilates changed that because it gave me a way to be in relationship with my body that was not built on constant correction. I could pay attention without immediately criticizing. I could notice where I was without instantly turning it into a verdict on my worth, my effort, or my future. And once that changed, my whole internal environment changed with it. That matters because bodies respond to environments. And my old environment had been full of pressure, fear, urgency, and disappointment. The new one felt steadier, more supportive, more workable, more human. That is why this worked when nothing else did. Not because it was magical, not because menopause weight loss suddenly became easy, not because I discovered some perfect formula no one else knows. It worked because it changed the conditions my body had been living inside. I stopped feeling under attack by my own process. I stopped demanding dramatic proof before I would trust the early signs. I found a form of consistency that did not feel punishing, and I stopped relating to my body like it was a daily disappointment. Those were the real changes. The 40 pounds came out of those changes. And I think this is so important because many women in menopause are still trying to solve this from a state of pressure. They are trying to create release from within panic. They are trying to build consistency from within shame. They are trying to help their body while constantly sending it the message that it is failing. That was exactly what I was doing. I was not stuck because I did not care enough. I was not stuck because I lacked discipline. I was not stuck because my body was incapable of change. I was stuck because the process I was using kept reinforcing the very state that made my body hold on. Once that changed, my body changed too. Not overnight, not in a straight line, not without patience, but enough that I stopped feeling hopeless. And that shift in hope mattered almost as much as the weight itself. Because when you have been stuck long enough, hopelessness starts to settle into your identity. You stop asking, "What if this can change?" and start asking, What if this is just my body now? That is a heartbreaking place to live. I know, because I lived there for a while. So when things finally started working, what changed was bigger than the scale. I started feeling connected to my body again. I started feeling less trapped in the daily emotional noise around weight. I started realizing that progress did not have to come through suffering. And I started trusting that a calmer, steadier, more supportive path could take me further than all the force I had been using before. That is what this taught me. Not only that 40 pounds could come off, but that the thing that finally worked was the thing that changed the way my body experienced the process. If you are in menopause right now and feel like nothing is working, I want you to remember this. Sometimes the answer is not more force. Sometimes the answer is finding the first method your body no longer feels the need to fight. That was my experience. And once I found that, everything started to move. If this resonated with you, go watch the Menopause Weight Reset series next, because I made that playlist for women who feel like they have tried everything and still do not feel at home in their body. Each video builds on the last one, and if this story felt familiar, that playlist will help you feel more understood, more supported, and far less alone. And if this message spoke to you, please subscribe to Hormonal Balance Institute. Every time you subscribe, comment, or engage, you help this message reach another woman who may be standing in front of her mirror right now, feeling discouraged, inflamed, and convinced she is somehow failing. I want us to reach those women with something gentler, wiser, and more hopeful than the usual noise. So, subscribe to Hormonal Balance Institute, and then go watch the Menopause Weight Reset series, because losing 40 pounds was not just about the number. It was about finally discovering what worked when nothing else did.